How you doing, everybody? This is Dick Stull, and this is Sports Today and In the Day. Because sport is rhythm, and rhythm is sport. It's a backhand stab of a worm burner grounder behind third base, followed by a get-to-your-feet frozen rope throw to first to nail the runner. It's a pump fake, get him in the air, turn-around jumper from the baseline. It's a left hook body shot off your back leg that stops the heavy bag, no vibration on the chain. Because sport is rhythm, and rhythm is sport. It's playing with movement melodies over your heartbeat. It's stepping inside your opponent's sense of time. It's the secrets of space and the paradox of pace on the playing field. It's will, it's strategy, it's innovation and kinetic chords. It's your own song, your own sentient, sensuous symphony. How you doing, everybody? This is Dick Stull for Sports Today and In the Day on the outskirts of the beautiful campus of Humboldt State University in Arcata, California. It is February 27. With me today, I have cool as a cucumber Cole Kirchner, philosophy student from Humboldt State University, and Rocket Robert from the kinesiology department. And today we're going to be talking about the more things change, the more things stay the same. Our last podcast, we talked about the ancient Greeks and how similar we are to them and they to us. Today, we'll be talking a little bit about some of the fitness gurus and some of the fitness fads going on today that really had their antecedents 100 years ago or even more than that. Rocket Robert was just looking at an article about the origin of Pilates.
Well, it draws very much a parallel to the article that you'll bring up today, Doc, about Sandow and his beginnings, and it talks about his love for anatomy and how much he studied anatomy charts and how much he was actually posing a lot for anatomy charts in the beginnings. And when he was actually put in a camp in the Isle of Man, he devised exercises to keep inmates stronger, and because he thought being stronger is what will get them through the camp and lead to their survival. So it just draws parallels to today's fads and how the earlier quest for the strongest man developed a lot of what we use today in yoga and Pilates and all this different equipment that we use.
One of the things you mentioned, Robert, was Sandow. Sandow was a topic of conversation we had in our kinesiology class today. He was the Arnold Schwarzenegger before his time. He was Arnie 100 years ago, and even before that, he was considered the world's first perfect man, and he was the first widely recognized bodybuilder. The discussion of Sandow is in a fabulous book written by John Casson, and the title of that book is Houdini, Tarzan, and the Perfect Man. One of the things that happened 100 years ago, and this actually coincided very much with the presidency of Theodore Roosevelt, is there was a mass movement in the United States as a rural society, and we were becoming more citified. More and more people, particularly men and women, were working in the cities. And there was a huge movement for fitness 110 years ago. Much of it was spurred on by the Young Men's Christian Association, but there were also movements such as muscular Christianity and other movements which were saying that men were becoming weak and that our muscles were becoming atrophied. There was actually kind of a push for a manhood movement over 100 years ago to reclaim people's manhood. Joseph Sandow actually was a person who had actually trained in Europe and came to the United States, signed on with the biggest theater promoter in the world, Florence Ziegfeld, and to show off his body. And one of the interesting things about Sandow is that he wasn't huge. He was actually an average-sized man who had built up his body. And for many men, he presented some kind of an attainable ideal. He wasn't somebody like John L. Sullivan, who was the heavyweight boxing champion, who nobody could aspire to be. But Sandow, in many ways, was just like us. And he was the first bodybuilder to ever captivate the imagination of the common man. in this period where it seemed to be a social movement to have men reclaim their manhood. The other thing that's interesting about that is that Teddy Roosevelt, our president after 1901, kind of embodied the same kind of imperial reclamation of one's manhood. He was a Rough Rider at San Ron Hill. He was a cowboy in the Dakotas. He wrestled and boxed at Harvard University, and it was just a very important theme 100 years ago.
That reminds me, Doc. I remember reading once that, well, it was something that Teddy Roosevelt wrote, I think back when he was the Secretary of Defense. And it was an argument for why we should go to the war in the Philippines. And one of his main arguments was because the youth of today, the men of the time, were so comfortable in the luxuries of the middle class that they needed something to turn them into men. And that thing was supposed to be war in the Philippines. I just thought that was pretty interesting.
A wonderful broadcaster, Dave Zirin, a man that I've read much and listened to. The title of his show is Where Sports and Politics Collide. And actually, Mr. Kirchner over here, philosophy major, that's in fact true, that building oneself up and the heat of competition, according to Teddy Roosevelt, was most manifest in war, not unlike the ancient Greeks. Doc Stull back with you here. We're going back to our original theme, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Eugene Sandow actually was one of the first proponents of marketing fitness equipment. Sandow, with his incredible physique and with the rise of print journalism, became kind of a fixture in the American mind. In a sense, a new American hero, much like John L. Sullivan was as a boxer years before Sandow. Sandow marketed fitness equipment and made a tremendous amount of money. One of the problems, though, was that the equipment that he marketed was not the equipment that made his muscles what they were. Sandow got the way he was by lifting weights, but weights were not economically efficient to ship. So Sandow marketed light, springy type weights with the idea that people would believe that they would have bodies like him. This was at best dishonest, and Sandow made a tremendous amount of money, and people bought these. People did become stronger and probably helped their lifestyles, but they could never hope to look like Sandow unless they lifted weights. And it wasn't until we started to mass produce weights and the mass explosion of health clubs that it became more economically feasible for the common person to do that. Houdini, Tarzan, and the Perfect Man, the White Male Body and the Challenge of Modernity in America by John Casson. A remarkable book that gives you a lot of insights into where we are today based on where we were 100 years ago. I'd like to close with the opening paragraph of John Casson's remarkable book. Images of male muscular development and bodily perfection have both a distinguished lineage and a troubled history in Western culture. Though securely established in classical Greece and Rome, their position afterward became highly precarious, particularly in the context of a Christian pursuit of spiritual perfection that denied the body. In response, the artists from the Renaissance on have been remarkably resourceful in attaching both male and female nudes to classical biblical ideal or exotic subjects. In addition, beginning in the 1840s, the new medium of photography offered an expanding range of images of the nude in more or less acceptable guises. Academic studies for artists, records of medical and scientific projects, ethnographic evidence of exotic peoples, and pornography. Still, even in the late 19th century, no display of the unclad male figure, let alone the female one, bereft of divine, allegorical, or alien trappings, not as a god, virtue, ruler, hero, exotic figure, or scientific specimen, but simply as a person, was to risk falling from the lofty plane of the nude to the shameful one of the merely naked. Good writing from John Casson. This is Doc Stull for Sports Today and In the Day. Next week, we'll be doing the great female athletes of all time and their historical antecedents in ancient Sparta and the existence of female gladiators.